Everything changed in one conversation, and it wasn't even the loudest conversation of the episode. It was one sentence. One of those sentences that lands like a grenade because it confirms the thing somebody has been afraid to say out loud the entire time. Jasmine looks at Matt like she's trying to see if he's still on her team, and she basically drops the emotional equivalent of a mic. She says she feels like someone is trying to replace her role before the baby even arrives. And the wild part is, Matt reacts the way a lot of people react when they don't want to believe the worst. He treats it like it's just another misunderstanding. Like, babe, you're reading into it. Like, my mom's just excited. But the audience immediately clocked what this really is. This is not about nursery paint colors. This is not about grandma wanting to help. This is a power struggle, and it's happening before the baby is even here, which is when these dynamics usually start getting messy. And when the fight starts this early, that tells me something. The foundation was already cracked. The pregnancy didn't create the problem. It exposed it. And then what happened next took something that could have stayed private, an awkward boundary conversation, into an all-out family war. Because the minute you make a pregnant woman feel like she's being pushed out of her own motherhood, you're not arguing about help. You're arguing about identity, control, and whose voice matters in this family. So the big questions after this episode aren't, was Jasmine overreacting? The big questions are, why is Matt's mom so comfortable making decisions without Jasmine in the room? Why is Matt translating both women's feelings instead of setting a boundary? And why does it feel like everyone is pretending this isn't about dominance when it's clearly about dominance? Because if that baby becomes the center of a tug-of-war, the relationship that's going to pay the price first isn't even the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. It's Jasmine and Matt. Always is. Let's talk about the moment Jasmine first starts noticing something isn't right, because I think this is where a lot of viewers split into two camps, and honestly, I get why. We see Jasmine picking up on these little moments that, by themselves, you could dismiss. That's how this stuff works. It's never one giant obvious villain moment. It's 1,000 tiny decisions that add up. Matt's mother is talking nursery ideas like they're already settled. She's tossing out future schedules, who's going to be there, how often, what help will look like. She's even discussing names in a way that feels less like suggestions and more like she's already got a vote. And if you've ever been in this situation, you know the feeling Jasmine is describing. It's not that someone said, "I'm taking your baby." It's that you start realizing every plan is being formed around you instead of with you. You're technically in the room, but you're not in the decision. That's why the question, is Jasmine overreacting, is complicated, because on paper, if you list the actions, some people are going to go, that's just grandma being excited. But emotionally, the pattern Jasmine is reacting to is, my authority as the mother is being negotiated without my consent. And that hits different. Also, pregnancy is a vulnerable time. Your body is changing, your life is changing, and you're constantly being reminded that you're about to be responsible for a whole human being. When your environment feels unstable during that time, your nervous system doesn't interpret it as drama. It interprets it as danger. So when Jasmine starts looking uncomfortable, I didn't read it as her trying to create conflict. I read it as her trying to protect a future version of herself. The postpartum version. The sleep-deprived version. The version that might be bleeding, healing, hormonal, overwhelmed, while someone else is walking around acting like they're the manager of her baby. And here's the part nobody says out loud. Mothers-in-law who just want to help sometimes don't realize they're treating the pregnant woman like an incubator for the grandchild they feel entitled to. That's a harsh sentence, but it's a real dynamic. Not always, but often enough that viewers felt it immediately. Now, let's talk about Matt, because Matt is doing the thing that destroys relationships quietly, and then everyone acts surprised when it finally explodes. Matt gets stuck in the middle, and instead of picking a side, or even better, setting a boundary, he tries to calm both sides by kind of minimizing both sides. With Jasmine, it's, my mom only wants to help. With his mom, it's, Jasmine is emotional because of the pressure. That approach sounds reasonable if you're conflict avoidant. But it's actually a mess because he's basically telling each woman, your feelings are valid, while simultaneously implying, your feelings are a problem. To Jasmine, it sounds like, you're being sensitive. To his mom, it sounds like, she's irrational, just ignore it. And now both women feel dismissed, while also feeling like Matt is secretly on the other person's team. This is what people mean when they say neutrality is a choice. In family conflict, trying to stay neutral often means you're choosing the status quo. And the status quo here is, Matt's mom feels comfortable taking up space. Jasmine feels like she has to fight to be heard. So when Matt thinks he's being the peacemaker, what he's actually doing is acting like a translator instead of acting like a partner. And if you're about to become parents, your primary unit has to become your partner relationship, not your parent-child relationship. And the reason I'm harping on this is because you can already see the trap forming. If Matt doesn't learn how to hold boundaries with his mom, Jasmine will. And when she does, she's going to look like the difficult one because he didn't do the work early. That's how resentment gets manufactured. And then we get the dinner. The dinner that basically turns tension into war. It starts normal. That's what makes it feel so real. The worst family blow-ups often happen when people are pretending everything is fine. Everyone's making small talk, you're eating, you're doing the we're a family performance. And then Matt's mom casually drops this line about how she'll be spending lots of time raising the baby. And here's what's important. She may have meant it like, I'm going to be involved. I'm going to help. I'm excited. But Jasmine hears something completely different. She hears, I'm the third parent. She hears, this baby will be mine too. She hears, you're replaceable. So Jasmine responds with a line that made the entire dinner table freeze. So, you're planning on replacing me? That moment is the episode in a sentence. Because it forces everyone to stop pretending this is about logistics and admit it's about roles. And the silence after Jasmine says it? That silence is doing a lot of work. Because in that silence, everyone's thinking, oh, this is what she's been feeling. And also, oh no, she said it out loud. Now, some viewers watched that and felt Jasmine was accusing the mom of something extreme. Like, replace you? That's dramatic. But other viewers watched it and said, no, she just translated what the mom has been implying this whole time. This is why these conflicts are so hard. People aren't fighting about the same thing. Matt's mom thinks they're fighting about intentions. Jasmine is fighting about impact. And Matt is fighting about comfort, his comfort in the middle. Then Matt's mom finally fires back, and this is where the episode gets more interesting because she doesn't collapse into apology mode. She pushes back hard. She says Jasmine has been suspicious since day one. She says nobody is stealing anyone's baby. And she says being a grandmother doesn't require permission. Phew. Because that last line is basically the thesis statement of a certain type of family culture. I'm the elder, so I have rights culture. And let me be fair. Some families genuinely see grandparent involvement as automatic, normal, expected. In some cultures, it would be weird for a grandma not to be deeply involved. But in the kind of setup Jasmine and Matt seem to be building, a nuclear family with modern boundaries, that line is a red flag. Not because being a grandmother is bad, but because it implies entitlement. It implies access. It implies hierarchy. Doesn't require permission is the same logic people use when they show up unannounced, when they post baby photos without asking, when they override feeding choices, when they criticize parenting in the name of experience. It's not about love. It's about authority. And to be honest, this is where I stop seeing this as a story with a clear villain. Because I do think Jasmine's suspicion has probably been building, and it probably shows. When you feel threatened, you start scanning for threat. You start interpreting everything through that lens. So Matt's mom saying, you've been suspicious since day one, might be true. But also, why has Jasmine been suspicious since day one? People don't just randomly wake up and decide they don't trust you. Suspicion usually comes from pattern recognition. From little boundary crossings that nobody else wants to call boundary crossings because they're family. So what we're watching is two women with two different fears. Jasmine's fear is being erased. Matt's mom's fear is being excluded. And Matt's fear is being forced to choose. Then Jasmine makes her biggest declaration after leaving dinner, and this is the emotional centerpiece of the whole thing. She tells Matt, if your family thinks they can control my child, they're declaring war. And I can already hear some people saying, war? Overreaction. But let's translate what she's saying in normal language. She's saying, if I have to fight for my authority as the mother, I will. And I'm not going to be polite about it anymore. Because up until now, she's been uncomfortable, she's been hinting, she's been trying to keep the peace. And the dinner blew the mask off. Now the conflict is explicit. And Matt's face in that moment tells you everything. He realizes this is no longer about parenting preferences. It's about trust. It's about whether Jasmine believes he will protect their little family unit. It's about whether he's a husband first or a son first. And that question ends marriages. I'm not saying it will, but I'm saying it's that serious. Because if Jasmine feels like she has to fight both Matt and his mother at the same time, she's going to eventually stop fighting and start detaching. Now we get the ripple effect. Family members start taking sides. Relatives start calling. Friends have opinions. And social media rumors start spreading inside the family circle, which is so modern and so toxic. Because once a conflict leaves the two people actually involved and becomes a group project, it almost never gets better. It becomes about reputation. It becomes about who said what. It becomes about who's the victim. And now nobody can back down without losing face. And the most interesting detail is that nobody agrees on what was actually said. Everyone remembers it differently. That's not just convenient drama. That's actually realistic. When people are emotionally activated, memory becomes selective. If you already believe Jasmine is suspicious, you'll remember her tone as aggressive. If you already believe the mom is controlling, you'll remember her words as possessive. People don't recall facts. They recall feelings. This is where I want to talk about fan reaction because online, this is the exact kind of storyline that splits the audience into tribes. Some fans feel Jasmine is setting healthy boundaries and doing what Matt refuses to do. They're saying she's pregnant, she's stressed, and she deserves to feel supported, not managed. Many viewers are saying the raising the baby comment was the real tell because grandmas who say that usually don't mean babysit sometimes. They mean, I'm an authority figure. But there's another section of the audience that thinks Jasmine is projecting. They're saying, she's insecure, she's threatened by a grandmother's excitement, and she's escalating everything. Those viewers tend to focus on the replace me line and call it dramatic, like she's framing normal involvement as competition. And then there's a third group, honestly the group I think is closest to the truth, who believe both things can be true. Jasmine is right to want boundaries. Matt's mom is right to want connection. And Matt is the one failing by not creating a clear structure for what help actually means. Because what I saw online, especially in comment sections and discussion threads, was people basically reliving their own family trauma through the storyline. You can tell who has had a boundary stomping in-law and who has had a daughter-in-law cut them out. Everyone's arguing from their own life. And that's why this episode hit. It wasn't just drama. It was relatable. Now, deep dive time because the behavior patterns here are loud if you know what to look for. Pattern number 1. Triangulation. Matt is the bridge between two women who don't feel safe with each other. And instead of helping them build direct communication, he's passing messages. That's a classic triangle. It keeps the conflict alive because nobody feels fully heard by the person they're actually upset with. Pattern number 2. Role confusion. Matt's mom is behaving like she has parental authority. Jasmine is reacting like her identity is under threat. And Matt is acting like a child caught between two adults, rather than an adult building his own family. Pattern number 3. The help smokescreen. Help is one of the most manipulative words in family systems because it sounds kind and generous, but it can hide control. Real help is offered with consent and boundaries. Control is disguised as help when it comes with expectations, guilt, or ownership. Now, the episode does something smart. It gives us that unexpected moment where Jasmine overhears Matt's mom talking privately, and she expects another insult, but she hears genuine fear. Matt's mother admits she's terrified of losing connection with future grandchildren because it already happened once before in the family. That detail reframes a lot. It doesn't excuse boundary issues, but it explains the intensity. It suggests her behavior isn't just entitlement. It might be panic. It might be, if I don't secure my place now, I'll be shut out again. And that's when you can see how these cycles repeat. People who have experienced emotional cutoff in families often overcorrect. They try to lock in closeness. They try to guarantee access. And ironically, that behavior is exactly what pushes people away. So suddenly, Jasmine's war mindset and the mom's I don't need permission mindset makes sense as two sides of the same coin. Both are trying to prevent loss. Jasmine is trying to prevent losing her motherhood experience. Matt's mom is trying to prevent losing her grandparent connection. And Matt is trying to prevent losing approval from either side. That's why he jokes. That's why he downplays. That's why he tries to smooth instead of solve. Which brings us to the emotional confrontation that happens after, where instead of screaming, both women finally sit down without an audience, without interruptions, just honesty. This is the first time in the whole storyline where I felt like there was a path forward. Because when it's just the two of them, what comes out isn't you're evil. It's fear, expectations, misunderstandings. Jasmine explains what it feels like to be talked over while she's carrying the baby. Matt's mom explains what it feels like to be terrified of being cut out. And for the first time, both actually listen. That's huge. But also, I'm not celebrating too early because a single honest conversation doesn't erase a power dynamic. It just reveals it. Real change would look like agreements, boundaries, clear roles. Like, here's what postpartum will look like. Here's when visits happen. Here's what decisions are ours. Here's how you can support us. Because if you don't define it, the strongest personality defines it for you. And that brings us to the final twist, the cliffhanger that had viewers yelling at their screens. Just when peace seems possible, Matt unknowingly says one sentence that reignites everything. He jokingly refers to his mother as the baby's second mom. And Jasmine's expression changes instantly. That right there is the core issue. Not the mother-in-law, not the dinner, not the nursery. Matt. Because whether he meant it as a joke or not, that sentence tells Jasmine what Matt believes underneath all his neutrality. He still sees his mom as a co-parent figure. He still hasn't fully separated from his family system. He still treats his mother's role as something that's equal to, or competing with, Jasmine's role. And if I'm Jasmine, I'm not just hearing a joke. I'm hearing a promise. I'm hearing, when push comes to shove, I will validate my mother's entitlement. And that's why the scene fading there is so effective, because it leaves the audience debating, did we just watch the end of the war, or the beginning of the real war? Now, let's be fair to Matt for 1 second. People joke like that all the time. Some families use language like second mom to mean another person who loves the baby. In a healthy dynamic, that line could land as sweet. But this isn't a healthy dynamic right now. Context matters. When you're in the middle of a boundary crisis, second mom isn't sweet. It's gasoline. It's also revealing that Matt doesn't understand what Jasmine is asking for. Jasmine isn't asking his mom to be uninvolved. She's asking Matt to stop treating his mom like she has equal say. And that's the main contradiction of Matt's behavior. He claims he wants peace, but he keeps doing little things that side with his mother's position. He frames Jasmine as emotional. He reframes his mom's control as help. And then he makes a second mom joke that basically validates the exact fear Jasmine has been expressing. So at this point, Matt has an impossible decision, and he's kind of running out of time. He can support Jasmine and set clear boundaries with his mother, which will hurt his mom's feelings and might cause family backlash, but will protect his marriage. He can support his mother and keep her deeply involved on her terms, which will likely destroy Jasmine's trust and create constant conflict in the home. Or he can try to stay neutral. But neutrality is already making everyone angry because it's not leadership. And once there's a baby, there's no room for passive leadership. Decisions have to be made. Here's what I predict if nothing changes. This conflict will get worse after the baby arrives. Not because anyone is evil, but because postpartum magnifies everything. Sleep deprivation magnifies resentment. Visits magnify boundary issues. Advice magnifies insecurity. And if Matt's mom is already planning her raising the baby era, she's not going to suddenly become hands-off once the baby is here and she's excited and bonding. Oh, unless Matt and Jasmine set a plan now, the next wave of fights will be about things like who gets to be in the delivery room, how soon people visit, who holds the baby, feeding choices, social media posting, holidays, and I did it this way with you, Matt comparisons. And those are the fights that don't just cause tension, they cause permanent damage.